The stench was the first thing to hit you, long before you saw the walls. A cloying, sickly sweet odor of unwashed men, stale piss, and the metallic tang of fear. It clung to your tongue, coated the back of your throat, and promised a day like the last, and the one before that, and every damnable day since we encircled this cursed hill. My stomach rumbled, a traitorous protest against the meager rations. I tightened the belt on my tunic, and the leather digging into my ribs. Below in the valley, the ant-like figures of our legion stirred. The clang of hammers on iron and the shout of centurions, the low murmur of thousands of voices preparing for another day of digging. Always digging. Ditches, palisades, towers, the very earth itself turned against these stubborn Gauls. I ran a hand over my stubbled chin, feeling the grit of dust and sweat. Elysia, a single, insignificant hill in the grand scheme of things. Yet, here we were, held captive by its very existence, trapped between a defiant enemy within and a restless, growing horde from without. Vercingetorix, the Lion of Gaul, had chosen his ground well, and Caesar, my friend, commander, had walked us straight into the lion's den. The sun was beginning to peek over the eastern horizon, painting the sky in angry shades of red and orange. It promised heat, more dust, and perhaps, finally, the breaking of this infernal stalemate. Or perhaps it promised only more blood. And for a fleeting moment, as the first rays touched the distant Gallic relief army, I wondered which side the god truly favored. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Courtney, and welcome to the Time Travelers Club. Last time we discussed how, after a tumultuous youth in Rome, where he accumulated substantial gambling debts, Antony fled to Greece around 58 BCE to escape his creditors. As it would turn out, joining the military would be a practical way out of his financial predicaments, perhaps not surprising, with his physically inclined talents. A tradition that still holds true today, as a matter of fact. While in Athens studying oratory and military exercises, he was invited by Aulus Gabinus, the Roman proconsul of Syria, to join his military campaigns in the east. Antony, despite initially being hesitant to serve in a private capacity, accepted a commission to command the cavalry. This suggests he saw military service as a viable and honorable path to a career, especially given his family's tradition of military involvement. Antony's service was almost exclusively as a cavalry commander during these years, a role perfectly suited to his dynamic and often impulsive nature, and one that required significant personal bravery and leadership. So, first up is the Junaean campaigns from 57 to 56 BCE, suppressing the Hasmonean rebellions. Following Rome's golden boy Pompey's conquest in 63 BCE, Judea was not fully annexed, but rather made a client kingdom, with the Hasmonean dynasty's power significantly curtailed. Hyrcanus II, supported by Rome, held the high priesthood and nominal rule, but his ambitious and capable nephew Alexander, son of Aristobulus II, wow, that is a name, repeatedly challenged Roman authority and Hyrcanus's position. These rebellions were a direct threat to Roman stability in the Levant, aka a threat to Roman interests. A lot like how we do the same thing today, but also, again, just like with Cleo, we see Romans just sticking their nose into other people's business, like they rule the place and getting so offended when they are told where to shove it, playing the victim after they get called out. So, Gabinus, upon arriving in Syria, saw the pacification of Judea as a priority to secure his province's southern flank. His strategy involved both direct military engagement and administrative reorganization to prevent future uprisings.
Yeah, it's weird the parallels, right?
It really is.
Like the West involving themselves in Middle East and colonizing the Middle East and everything but name. Like setting up
Mm-hmm.
essentially puppet rulers and things like that. It just it's uncanny.
The politics have not changed. They really haven't.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, just called a different name.
Mm-hmm. In the same areas. It's kind of wild. By 57 BCE, Alexander had amassed a substantial force, purportedly 30,000 men. Gabinus, with Antony commanding his cavalry, engaged Alexander in open battle. Antony's cavalry would have been crucial for reconnaissance and harassing the enemy's flanks and breaking up their formations. After a Roman victory in the field, possibly near Jerusalem or somewhere around there, Alexander's forces retreated to the fortified positions. The rebels sought refuge in heavily fortified strongholds, which was a common feature of warfare in this region. Alexandrium was that's funny. I don't know. It's just like these guys naming everything after themselves. Alexander went to Alexandrium.
Yup.
Was a formidable Hasmonean fortress situated on a steep hill overlooking the Jordan Valley, known for its strategic importance and difficult access. It's very similar to, I think it's called Medina, something like that. It's not the first time. This is a pretty popular tactic in this area. They have these huge plateaus, like with cliffs, and they just build fortresses on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like good luck getting up here.
I mean, technically, it's the same thing for Rome, because Rome, like, where it actually is situated, is on top of a hill.
Oh yeah,
All
but
of
like
them
hills
want
have
that vantage point.
yeah, but hills have like an incline, right? At least something. These are like look up the pictures. It's just a cliff. Like it's literally like it's like Minecraft style cliffs, like just in the middle of nowhere. And like you build something literally on top of it, and you look down, and like it's like carved staircases inside of it, and it's like you have one door. Good luck. Yeah. So with that being said, the rebels sought. With that being said, Antony's cavalry would have played a role in containing the enemy during the siege, cutting off supplies and preventing reinforcements or escapes. During the direct assault, because you think with cavalry, like, okay, if you're doing a siege, right, and everyone's in place, what's the point of having all these horse bros? Well, if someone tries to bounce, like to send a message out on horseback, you have to have someone to catch up with them real quick and put them down. So during the direct assault, or after a period of attrition, Antony distinguished himself by his personal courage in leading charges against the enemy, likely being among the first Roman officers to breach or secure positions within the fortress. Its eventual capture was a major blow to Alexander's rebellion. Located to the east of the Dead Sea, Machaerus was another strong citadel. Antony's involvement here mirrored his role in Alexandrium, leading cavalry actions that contributed to the siege and eventual fall of that stronghold. His demonstrated bravery in these assaults earned him significant notice. By 56 BCE, Gabinus had successfully quelled the major rebellion. He then reorganized Judea into 5 administrative districts. This is what Rome, and like we, in the modern time, do this a lot too. This is like the playbook when you take over an area or have an area that was in rebellion or whatever, you redistrict everything. You separate everybody so that they can't organize easily anymore.
Sounds
You
familiar.
intentionally draw up lines in a way that forces people who don't like each other to have to live within the same area. Right? And you're
Yep.
not going to separate by people who get along. No, no, no. You're going to put people who hate each other. So they're going to be so busy fighting each other that they can't rise against you. And you're going to alienate them against their allies. So this is it. This is where a lot of this comes from.
Yep.
And so these administrative districts were called Syndria or councils. And their goal was aiming to decentralize this Hasmonean power, as I had just said. While Antony's direct role in administrative reform is unlikely, his military successes provide the necessary stability for Gabinius to implement these political changes. These campaigns would serve as Antony's proving ground. He transitioned from an aristocratic youth to a recognized military officer. Kind of like the local guy who in high school was that star quarterback, but then after he joined the army, came back a bitter, hardened vet. And I feel like we all know someone like that.
Yeah.
Also, just a little side note, it's interesting, right? It almost feels like with Antony, he's going through the parts of his life, starting at the beginning, and trying to counter whatever bad thing happened there. So in this case, it's almost like his dad was a bad military commander. He's going to go about really try to undo that sin first.
Mm-hmm.
His dad was a bad military commander, bring back honor to the military name of that family. So I do find that interesting, and I wonder if there's going to be a trajectory with that.
Possibly.
And clearly I would assume all be subconscious, but I do find that interesting. He's got a point to prove.
Mm-hmm.
But his bravery, especially in leading cavalry assaults against fortified positions, marked him as a daring and effective commander. His reputation would precede him and be a key factor in Caesar's willingness to take him on later as a subordinate.
Next came the Egyptian intervention in 55 BCE. This expedition was highly controversial in Rome. This was the one where Ptolemy XII, Auletes, deposed Pharaoh and Cleo's dad and had spent years in Rome lobbying for his restoration. In the process, incurring massive debts to wealthy Romans like Golden Boy Pompey, the Senate was divided, with some opposing intervention due to a perceived negative omen from the Sibylline books, and others, like Pompey, pushing for it. Gabinius ultimately acted without explicit senatorial decree, likely at the strong urging of Pompey, and for a massive bribe, reportedly 10,000 talents, an astronomical sum. But first, Gabinius's army had to cross the formidable Sinai Desert from Syria to Egypt, a logistical challenge that required careful planning and execution. Antony's cavalry would have been vital for scouting and securing the flanks during this arduous march. And with a sense of deja vu, Pelusium was a strategically crucial port city at the northeastern entrance to the Nile Delta, heavily fortified and guarding access to Egypt. Antony was given the critical task of leading the initial assault on Pelusium, likely at the head of his cavalry and supported by infantry. Plutarch emphasizes his personal daring, stating that he was the first Roman to enter the city. This suggests a frontal assault where Antony's bravery was key to breaking the enemy's resolve or finding a weakness. The Egyptian forces guarding Pelusium included those under the command of Ptolemy XII's daughter, and generally badass bitch, Berenice IV, and her husband, Archelaus, who was also there.
Not Bernie Sanders.
Not
No!
Bernie Sanders!
Again!
But they offered a stiff resistance. Antony's success here implies he overcame significant opposition. After the city was taken, Antony demonstrated a surprising degree of humanitarian leadership and overall being a decent guy. He reportedly prevented Gabinus' soldiers from massacring the city's inhabitants, showing a pragmatic concern for maintaining order and minimizing unnecessary bloodshed. So, like, that's huge.
The bar's in hell, guys. That's what we're saying. Like, he was such a good guy. He made sure that his people didn't kill everyone in sight.
I mean, yes, but also...
I know.
That was kind of the name of the game of that day. But honestly, this was a huge, like, visual, beneficial thing for long-term Roman control. This act further endeared him to the local populace and demonstrated a capacity for restraint. After securing Pelusium, the Roman forces moved towards Alexandria, the capital. Antony continued to play a leading role in the advance. Now, Archelaus, Ptolemy XII's son-in-law and co-ruler with Berenice, was a formidable opponent. In a decisive engagement, Antony's forces were instrumental in defeating and killing Archelaus, paving the way for Ptolemy XII's restoration. The Egyptian campaign solidified Antony's military credentials even further. He proved himself capable of leading a complex foreign intervention, showcasing not only bravery but also a degree of strategic foresight and restraint. This campaign also provided him with his first significant exposure to Egypt, and crucially, to Cleopatra VII. Then a young princess, around 14-year-old. While their famous relationship would blossom later, this initial encounter laid the groundwork.
And so this is really a couple things really interesting. First of all, according to the stories, which who knows, legend goes he met her and was immediately enamored with her right there and then. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Grant, I feel like I don't know how I feel about that. She's 14. But I also don't necessarily think that's the case. I don't think he just didn't notice her, though, either. She is a princess, and if we know anything about Cleopatra, she always knew kind of how to carry herself. Well, I bet you he was like, oh, wow, look at this, young girl. Man, like, I'm sure he was a little, like, damn, like, at least, like, found her interesting. Would have definitely seen how she carried herself and probably did make a mental note of that, because that's very different than Roman women would carry themselves at the time, and here's this 14-year-old girl. But on the other hand, too, when we were talking about the restraint, right? I find this interesting. I wonder again if this is his trauma coming out, right? His father died violent ends, right? Because of the brutality of war and people just killing, but specifically his stepdad, just killing without any due process and killing for the sake of killing. I wonder if that was a little bit of that. I mean, sure,
Possible.
He's a political person and he understands how things look, and like showing restraint is a Roman virtue and all that, but like he could have easily gotten away with it. This isn't Rome. This isn't Roman looking people,
Mm-hmm.
And yet I wonder if it was just like he just didn't want to see more blood shed than necessary, at least at this time. I wonder. It's interesting.
It is.
At least during this period, he's giving that. It seems like that keeps to be a thing, and it could be all wrong. It could just be propaganda, but So, after the successful Egyptian campaign, Antony's period of service under Gabinus concluded. He returned to Rome. His military reputation significantly enhanced. This period proved opportune, as Julius Caesar now firmly entrenched in his conquest of Gaul, was looking for capable and loyal lieutenants. Antony's proven record in the East made him an attractive candidate. Meanwhile, Julius Caesar was in the midst of his epic conquest of Gaul, the Gallic Wars. By 55 BCE, Caesar had achieved significant victories, extending Roman control over most of Gaul. However, the scale of his conquest and ongoing pacification of numerous tribes meant he constantly needed capable and loyal subordinates. Look at that. It feels like the conquered people don't necessarily appreciate being conquered.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be colonized.
Nobody does.
Mm-hmm. His most important lieutenant at this time, Titus Labienus, was highly effective, but Caesar always sought to expand his pool of reliable commanders. It was in 54 BCE that Antony joined Caesar in Gaul. I would say one of the most famous of partnerships in history. His experience in diverse terrain, his skills as a cavalry commander, and his demonstrated bravery and leadership made him an immediate asset to Caesar's formidable army. This move directly set the stage for his indispensable role in the later half of the Gallic Wars and subsequent Roman Civil War. The years from 57 to 54 BC were thus the essential crucible that forged Marcus Antonius into the formidable military leader he would become well known for. It was in 54 BCE that Marcus Antonius joined Julius Caesar's staff officially in Gaul. While the exact details of their initial meeting and specific conversations, of course, are not documented, we can infer a great deal from their subsequent relationship. As we mentioned before, Antony's mother, Julia Antonia, was a distant cousin of Julius Caesar. This familial tie would have provided an immediate connection and a degree of inherent trust within the Roman aristocratic system. Caesar would have known Antony's family and background. Also, by this point, he would not have arrived as an unknown. His recent successes in the East under Gabinus, particularly his daring actions in Pelusium and Judea, would have been known in Rome and certainly within Caesar's camp. Caesar, always keen to recruit talent, would have been aware of Antony's military prowess. The Gallic Wars were arduous and required skilled commanders to lead legions, suppress rebellions, and manage vast territories. All of that Antony had just done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, more so, like a lot of these other commanders, this is just like, I don't want to say their first time, but their first go at it, even if it's been for a while. So, like, they started the Gallic Wars, and they're still in the Gallic Wars, versus Antony just successfully suppressed rebellions against colonialism. So he's looking at him and going, okay, this is a person who knows how to get to the end of it, and we need to get to the end of it. So Caesar needed loyal and effective officers who could execute his strategic vision. Finally, Antony, for his part, was ambitious and recognized that attaching himself to the rapidly rising star of Julius Caesar was the fastest and most effective path to political and military advancement in Rome. Caesar offered unparalleled opportunities for glory, wealth, and future political office. Their meeting, therefore, was likely a straightforward process of Antony offering his services and Caesar recognizing the value of adding such a proven, if at times volatile, commander to his staff.
Once Antony joined Caesar, their relationship deepened quickly.
They became
Transforming
bros.
they were bros. It's a bromance.
Bromance. That's
It
the ultimate bromance.
transformed into one of mutual respect, though not without its complexities due to Antony's flamboyant personality. Antony's immediate effectiveness in Gaul earned him Caesar's strong backing. Caesar dispatched Antony back to Rome to stand for election as quaestor 452 BCE. This was a crucial first step in the cursus honorum, the political career path in Rome. After this election, Antony returned to Gaul and continued to serve with Caesar in this official capacity. Antony frequently commanded cavalry units, leveraging his expertise from the east. He also served as a legate, a senior officer appointed by a commander, often with imperium and command of legions, demonstrating Caesar's growing trust in him with significant military responsibilities. Of course, Antony was known for his boisterous personality, love of revelry, and sometimes undisciplined behavior. Typical jock behavior. This contrasted somewhat with Caesar's own disciplined and intellectually rigorous approach. However, while some ancient sources suggest Caesar was occasionally irritated by Antony's excesses, he largely overlooked them due to Antony's unwavering loyalty and military effectiveness. Caesar understood that Antony was a valuable asset, even if it came with a certain degree of baggage. Caesar was pragmatic and willing to tolerate personal quirks in exchange for competence and loyalty. And by 52 BCE, this would lead up to Antony playing a crucial role in the monumental siege of Alesia.
So, ultimately, let's be real, Antony's found a new daddy.
Yes.
This is a father figure. He looks up to him, and it's like, oh, you rapscallion, you tousles his hair a little bit, like, you're so crazy, like, oh god, you need to simmer down, boy, let me cut. But like this, like, student teacher role, like, and again, like, he's great cousin, whatever you want to call him, like, it's again this is a man who's in the same age as his mom. It's giving dad energy. And, that's why I call him New Daddy.
It's fair.
And we'll see some of that develop, and kind of, you'll see where I'm not off the mark with that. But now we're getting into a pretty big moment. The siege of Alesia, fought in September of 52 BC, was the climactic and most famous military engagement of Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars. It represented a classic example of siege warfare in Roman military engineering, ultimately leading to the subjugation of Gaul. Like, this is it. This is that moment where areas that we know today as Belgium, France, large swaths of Germany, Spain, all of it come under Roman rule. And this is the nail in that coffin. It could have, if they had won, it could have turned around. Rome wouldn't have been there. Who knows? Rome may not have ever been empire. But alas, we'll see. Julius Caesar appointed as proconsul of Cisalpine Gaul, Illyricum, and Gallia Narbonensis in 58 BCE, embarked on a series of campaigns that would eventually become known as the Gallic Wars. His initial justifications were apparently to protect Roman allies. We've heard the story before, blah, blah, blah. We have to invade. They have weapons of mass destruction.
Yes.
Yeah, whatever. And prevent, or because they keep jumping our border, and prevent Gallic migrations into Roman territory. But his true aim was the complete conquest of Gaul, which would bring him immense wealth, military glory, and political prestige in Rome. Over several years, Caesar had systematically subdued various Gallic tribes, often exploiting their internal divisions and rivalry. Tell me when to stop. I know. He employed a strategy of rapid movements, decisive battles even, and construction of impressive military infrastructure, like the Rhine bridges, which still stand today. While many tribes were defeated, a widespread, unified resistance had not yet fully materialized. how these were. I mean, if we're using a more modern comparison, and I hesitate a little bit just because there's some people who like to say, see, you, then like weirdly enough, turning on its head for their own racism. But it's kind of like when America went against the native peoples and their tribes,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We like to lump everyone like the Native Americans, but these are all individual people with their own cultures and stuff like that. And they're like, well, why didn't they just all get together?
Because they were
Yeah,
not like that's not how they
right.
worked.
Yet we somehow understand that Europe isn't just Europe. Like it's a bunch of different countries. Like why can't Europe just get along and be one big country?
Mm-hmm.
They all speak different languages. They all have different cultures. Like right. And Gaul's similar. Like Rome does this great job of just like we did with the native peoples, lumping them as like all Gallic. They all, but it's like, yeah, they have the same mother language, but like even then within that, like if you were speaking to someone from Gaul in Spain versus someone all the way up near like where today Belgium is, those languages would have been very different. Like the dialect to the point of almost being its own language, right?
Yes.
And so while there were these quote and tribes, we make I feel like when we use word tribe, it makes it sound like they're these like small backwards communities. And that's on purpose, right? But we have to put those prejudices aside. Essentially, there's all these countries, right? Little countries that he's taking over.
Mm-hmm.
And they just haven't gotten together yet and decided to band together because they are individual little countries. Um, However, by 52 BC, after years of Roman campaigns, these Gallic tribes grew increasingly desperate and feared the complete loss of their independence, culture, and sacred lands. This widespread discontent finally coalesced under the leadership of Vercingetorix, a charismatic and intelligent chieftain of the Averni tribe. So, like, again, it's like when you're hitting this moment, like, right, and again, American history parallel, like, towards the, like, mid and late 1800s, yes, you did see Native peoples band together despite conflict in the past or whatever, because they realize there is a greater threat. And if they don't all band together, like, they're going to lose it all. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, similar results. I know these Native people still exist. I know they are still, but like we cannot ignore what happened, right? I don't want to say because we're not doing like the noble savage, like commentary where like like and they were doomed to lose. Like I don't believe that at all.
No.
But at the same time, the result was that these people lost their land, the thing that they were fighting for. They
Yes.
lost their connection a lot of the times to their culture. Their kids were taken away and schooled in Anglican ways. This is what's
Mm-hmm.
going to eventually happen here. You are Romanizing the Gauls. Um,
Absolutely. And I want to point out, hi, other people that are, very white that are over here in America. Hi. This is why we do not feel a connection to culture because our culture
mhm.
was destroyed by Rome in this time period.
And
And
like
then
it's
it
a
was
it's a copy
completely
paste pattern.
colonized over and over again by other things coming out of Rome. This is
And I
why.
and I'll even counter that a little bit because that's not just Rome. China did the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you would see this with the Persian later Achaemenid and Persian empires within a certain extent. Um, and like so it's like, but I will say Rome was very effective. And as far as the copy paste of it, and Europe in the Western context, it is there. We can directly because the British were inspired during the Age of Enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
by the Romans, and America would later be inspired by the Romans and do similar things. It just, Yeah.
Rome never fell.
Um,
Rome became an ideology. And
mhm.
that is
And
the problem. And unfortunately, Roman ideology is a disease to culture.
but I will say this. Despite their best efforts, there is a silver lining. There is hope. We still have Gallic languages.
Thank
Despite
God.
not just Rome, but in later Britain and stuff like that trying to erase it.
Mm-hmm.
Um the in Brittany, the Bretons are a great example of this, right? In France, and the Welsh and the Scottish, and like we do like those a lot of those and then later the Goths who are Germanic, right? Yes, they adopt a lot of Roman ideas and stuff, and like unfortunately because of written records not being a thing and oral tradition being a thing, we lost some of that, and that's very unfortunate. But despite if Rome had it their way, these people would not exist at all. Their cultures would be gone. We wouldn't have any of the languages, none of it. We'd all be speaking Latin,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't. So keep that in mind. You can't ever truly erase an entire culture. And that's the lesson here. And eventually Rome did fall. The British Empire did fall apart. And
The American Empire is falling apart right now. What? Who said
so,
that?
yeah. So, with that being said, empires get their own at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, call it karma, call it what you will. But right now we have a apparently long-haired ginger who needs to come onto the scene. A bit of a stereotype, but I guess whatever you think as your Braveheart Gaul, this is kind of it, I guess. Because Rome did paint a lovely racist picture. It's kind of like our equivalent of the long-haired, stoic, chiseled face with feathers in the hair. If you know what I'm describing,
Yep.
same thing, but whatever. Vercingetorix, often described as a young nobleman, was initially expelled by his own tribe's nobles, who feared Caesar's wrath. However, he rallied substantial following amongst common warriors, seized control of his capital, Gergovia, and began to forge an unprecedented coalition of Gallic tribes. He was not the first one to try and become king of the Gauls, but typically no one jumped on that. But desperate times. He imposed strict discipline and used a scorched earth policy, burning towns and farmlands to deny Roman provisions. They did this thing called foraging at the time, right? It makes it sound cute. Like they're all these Roman soldiers with their armor and their tunics are just skipping through the fields, picking berries. No, they are raiding towns. They're raiding farms. No food for you. And he's making the argument like, fuck it. If they're going to take all of our food anyway, we're going to starve. Might as well give them a big old middle finger. Let's burn it down, folks. Either way, we're going hungry. So, and people are like, yeah, fuck it. So he proved to be a formidable opponent. He inflicted a significant defeat on Caesar at the siege of Oh my god! At the siege of Gergovia, the capital of his own Averni tribe, marking one of Caesar's rare setbacks in general and in Gaul, and boosting Gallic morale significantly. This victory further encouraged other tribes to join the revolt. After the setback at Gergovia, Caesar did recoup. Vercingetorix, wary of the direct pitched battles against the highly disciplined Roman legions, continued his strategy of harassing Roman supply lines and avoiding decisive engagements, aka guerrilla warfare. However, following a successful cavalry engagement for the Romans, Vercingetorix decided to retreat with his forces to the fortified Oppidum, or hilltop settlement of Alesia. Alesia was a strong defensive position, situated on a high plateau with rivers on two sides, making it naturally difficult to attack. Vercingetorix likely intended to use Alesia as a base from which he could continue to coordinate larger Gallic resistance, anticipating that the Romans would be unable to breach its defenses before a massive Gallic relief army could be assembled and arrive. Caesar, recognizing that capturing Vercingetorix and breaking the back of this unified Gallic resistance was paramount, because nothing scares empire like all these people working together,
Mm-hmm.
decided to besiege Alesia. This set the stage for one of the most audacious and challenging operations in ancient military history, where Caesar's army would effectively be fighting two fronts, besieging the Gauls inside Alesia, while simultaneously defending themselves from a massive external relief force.
While primary sources like Caesar's Commentari de Bello Gallico, Commentaries of the Gallic War, provided the most direct accounts, they often focus on Caesar himself and the overall strategy rather than detailing every action of his lieutenants. However, from what we can glean and infer, Antony's role at Alesia was vital, particularly in the most desperate moments.
Also, if you ever get the chance to read them, God, I hate it so much. Caesar loves to do this thing where he talks about himself in third person. Like he's a biographer of Caesar.
No. Okay. Okay.
Things like Caesar approached his men. Like Caesar, like he always would refer to himself in the third person. Like this idea that he's going to be so important that people won't want to hear him speaking with his own voice, and that therefore he's got to make sure he writes a history from the third person because people in the future will want to know. This is the man we're dealing with, guys.
Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna have to read some of this, honestly.
They're
So,
probably
Alesia was a massive undertaking for the Romans. Caesar's army, though disciplined, was heavily outnumbered. They had to construct two immense lines of fortifications. The first, circumvallation, was an inner line facing the city to prevent Vercingetorix's besieged Gallic forces from escaping. The other, contravallation, was an outer line facing outwards to protect against the anticipated arrival of a massive Gallic relief army. Antony's command would have been critical in maintaining the integrity of these lines, especially when under attack from both sides. No, and you know what? I think I actually saw a history special on this because I remember, okay, you're gonna hold up in here. I'm gonna build walls.
Yeah, there was a Netflix series that actually does a really good job of at least representing this, though they make Julius Caesar like super hot and blonde, and I like whatever.
Oh, that's a problem.
Yeah, I'm like, you
No,
forgot that he's balding with a big old head,
you know
but
what?
apparently he's like,
They made the center of the target so easy to see because where could they go? They couldn't go anywhere.
yeah.
But
But the thing is really it is wild. So you've got this like, you got the guys who are under siege, and then those guys are also under siege. And you're like, this is wild. Like you have like this is some wild stuff. And like
oh
I don't know historically too many other examples of something quite like this where you literally have a siege going on and then a wall around you and defending from that siege. Like it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. But Antony was again the commander of Caesar's cavalry at Alesia. The Roman cavalry, often augmented by allied German and Gallic auxiliaries, was crucial for keeping tabs on Vercingetorix's movements within the oppidum, and more critically, detecting the approach and movements of the massive Gallic relief force. They also guarded the flanks of the Roman legions during engagements, broke up enemy formations, and pursued enemy troops, which could turn a retreat into a rout. The true test came when the huge Gallic relief army, estimated to be over 250,000 strong,
Probably
arrived.
an exaggeration.
Probably.
Probably.
I mean,
Probably. Because the Romans
Caesar.
were and Greeks were real good, and Herodotus would do this kind of too, real good at like, eh, throw another zero on there. It looks a little better. But the point is like, no, it's because it's like, okay, like we have to show everyone how impressive this was. I mean, personally to me, 25,000 people, that's a lot of people. But if you throw another zero on it, it just seems like, oh my God, it should have been impossible. And like, because people weren't there to realize how hard this was, if you throw another zero on there, then they get it,
Yeah.
But
But that is a huge number. But
mhm.
apparently, the 250,000 strong arrived and launched coordinated attacks with Vercingetorix's besieged forces. This created a perilous situation for the Romans, who were caught between two large enemy forces. Antony would have been responsible for defending a significant segment of the contravallation, the outer defense line. These were not static walls. They were a complex system of ditches, palisades, towers, and traps. The Gauls concentrated their attacks on perceived weak points in the Roman lines, while Caesar himself famously rode in to reinforce areas under the most severe pressure. His ability to do so relied on his lieutenants, like Antony, holding their ground and preventing complete collapse elsewhere. Antony's command would have involved leading countercharges, bringing up reserves, and inspiring his men to repel wave after wave of Gallic assaults against the most intricate Roman fortifications. His presence and leadership would have been vital in maintaining morale and discipline among the Roman troops who were fighting for their lives. While the sources don't detail a specific Antony's charge in a way, they might in the way they might Caesar's personal interventions. A cavalry commander like Antony would have been positioned to exploit any weaknesses that developed in the Gallic formations. If a Gallic attack faltered, or if a breakthrough by Roman infantry created a gap, Antony's cavalry would be the natural force to press the advantage, turning a repulse into a full rout and inflicting heavy casualties. In summary, Antony's role at Alesia was not merely that of a participant, but a dynamic and essential commander of Caesar's cavalry, and a key figure in holding critical defensive sectors. His actions, though less individually highlighted than Caesar's, were integral to the intricate Roman defense that ultimately broke the Gallic spirit and led to Vercingetorix's surrender. It was a testament to his military competence and unwavering loyalty, solidifying his position as Caesar's most trusted lieutenant.
Don't worry, Courtney. You're almost done saying that name.
I
We'll
hope
never do
so.
it
Oh my
again.
god.
After the decisive victory at Alesia in 52 BCE, which saw the surrender of Vercingetorix and the effective collapse of the unified Gallic revolt, Gaul was largely subdued at this point. However, this didn't mean an immediate end to Roman military activity. You got to put it all down now.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we're not even going to wait for a little resistance. Genocide is the name of the game. The years of 51 and 50 BCE were characterized by what historians often refer to as, quote, mop-up operations or pacification campaigns. That's a nice way of putting it.
I hate how clean it makes it sound, but that's not clean at all.
Oh, mop up, you have to have a mess. Aimed at So the goal of this was aimed at crushing any lingering pockets of resistance and firmly establishing Roman authority across vast territory. And I'm going to assume it's not like they're making investigations where it's all really thought out and they make sure that the guilty parties are the ones that get. No. Just kill them all!
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the unified revolt under Vercingetorix, the resistance that remained in Alesia after it was fragmented, individual tribes or smaller confederations might still resist, but they lacked a central command, coordinated strategy, or mass appeal that Vercingetorix had commanded. Also, I just want to point out with Vercingetorix, he was a noble man, at least in how he surrendered. Vercingetorix ended up surrendering because there were women and children. People were starving and dying. And he sacrificed himself. He walked out, apparently, unarmed, and said, if I surrender myself, will you let these people go? And Caesar pinky promised he would. Yeah. He gets carted back to Rome. And I guess, I don't remember, he kind of just disappears. Some stories say he lives happily ever after in like a villa somewhere, which is first you want to go like, okay, sure, but like because he surrendered and because he was pretty brilliant and stuff like that, like some people that he has use, he understands how the Gauls work, so that could be it. Others have him as being executed. It just So with that being said, Vercingetorix is gone now.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got all this going on. I just felt like, since he was so important right now, like to just be like, and he surrendered, it does him no justice. So, like, I just wanted everyone to know context. Maybe one day we'll do a more like Patreon episode on him, like because I feel like you can't make a whole arc out of him. But like, it'd be pretty. He's still a pretty fascinating figure. So I'd like to talk about this same story, but from his side of it.
I would love to do that. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. But anyway. So all that being said, this allowed Caesar and his legates to deal with them individually, picking off these people one by one. Immediately after Alesia, Caesar marched south to the territory of Adui, asserting their allegiance. However, the Bituriges, a tribe that had been part of Vercingetorix's coalition, rose up. Caesar, though, quickly brought them into submission as well. Then you have, I love how these are like in alphabetical order. Like he's like, there's a system. We have to do it ABC.
ABC. Oh, God.
The Carnuits, known for their role in initiating the Great Revolt, also continued to resist, but were ultimately decisively routed by Caesar's forces. Resistance also flared up in northern Gaul, notably among the Bellovaci and the powerful Belgic tribe. Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
Just fun little things. Caesar marched north, of course, to confront them. While the Bellovaci initially employed guerrilla tactics and avoided a direct battle, Caesar eventually managed to corner and defeat them in a major engagement. Many other tribes in the north then sent hostages to Caesar, signaling their submission. Like, this is a common thing. Like, when people surrender or make alliances, it's like you exchange hostages. It's like, okay, I've got your second born here, and if you try anything funny, //. But also, like, they're going to be educated in that culture, So it is kind of like a weird diplomatic thing, too.
Yeah.
But if it's one-sided, that's a different story.
Yep.
But this is also, that becomes actually kind of like a tool of colonization, because now you take their children or whoever, and you educate them in the Roman way and then send them back. So, then tell me that this sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm.
finally, there was the siege of, oh boy, Axelodunum in 51 BCE. This was the last significant military confrontation of the Gallic Wars. Several remaining leaders, including Luctarius, a Cataracan, and Drapes, a Sinonian, took refuge in the highly fortified Oppidum in Axelodunum in northwest Gaul. And so this is still showing that they're trying to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Caesar's legates, particularly in Gaius Canius Rebellus and Gaius Fabius, because everyone, I will say,
So
for
many
as much as the
Gaiuses.
Gaul,
Jeez.
well, as much as the Gauls have wildly different names, to counter that, the Romans all are named Gaius. All. Like, and honestly, like, we probably didn't even mention these people's names because they're like, I mean, we're probably never going to see them again, but, you know, recognizing the strength of the defenses and abundant food supply this time, Caesar personally arrived and decided to target the town's water supply. He employed, well, this sources say ingenious engineering to divert or block the spring that fed the Oppidum. I mean, I guess it's ingenious, but you're also doing it to kill people. So,
Yeah.
forcing the defenders to rely on distant and exposed sources. Despite the desperate attempt by the Gauls to protect their water access, the Romans succeeded in cutting it off, facing thirst and inevitable starvation. The Gauls at Exilodunum were forced to surrender. Caesar's, wanting to make a brutal example to deter any further revolts, ordered the hands of all men who had been born against Rome to be cut off, though their lives were spared. I'm just going to put this into context. He cut off people's hands and sent them home. What are they going to do? They can't work.
No, they can't.
Yeah. So, with that severe punishment, it effectively ended any organized and armed resistance.
After Exilodunum, Caesar spent the remainder of 51 BCE traveling throughout Gaul with his victorious army. This was a deliberate show of force to ensure the loyalty of the myriad tribes. He established garrisons, settled administrative matters, and solidified Roman control. These mop-up operations, though less dramatic than Alesia, were crucial for consolidating Caesar's conquest. They ensured that Gaul was truly subdued and integrated into the Roman sphere, providing a secure frontier and a new source of wealth and manpower for the burgeoning Roman Empire. To put it simply, Caesar's and Antony's adventures had been brutal. Historians estimate millions of Gauls were killed and millions enslaved during the entire period of the Gallic Wars. For example, after the massacre of the Germanic tribes who had crossed into Gaul, Caesar's own writings indicate a desire to destroy the stock and name of the tribe of the Eburones for their resistance. This demonstrates a willingness to utterly break a resisting people. The treatment of Exilodunum, where the hands of all men who bore arms were cut off. It was a clear and horrific act of deterrence against any future armed resistance. These actions, while not targeting all Gallic culture, certainly aimed to destroy the communities that harbored and perpetuated it. Roman sieges often resulted in the destruction of Gallic oppida, fortified settlements. These were not just military strongholds, but also centers of Gallic political, economic, and religious life. Their destruction forcibly displaced populations and dismantled existing social structures. Though, not immediately after the conquest, the Roman government particularly under later emperors like Tiberius and Claudius, actively suppressed the Druidic order. The Druids were more than just priests. They were central to Gallic intellectual life, legal systems, education, and political cohesion. Their suppression was a direct attack on a core pillar of Gallic culture and identity. This policy aimed to remove a potential source of organized resistance and assimilate Gallic religious practices into the Roman pantheon through syncretism.
Yeah, and all of this, Antony is a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like this for him. I don't like this for him. It's a
No.
bummer. He's a part of genocide, cultural and literal,
Mm-hmm.
and proud. So we're not making him a hero here, right?
No.
No one in history is heroes, right? And so while we are trying to explore these people and make them more complex, this is part of that complexity, right?
Yeah. They're not
So
angels or demons. They are both. They are human.
it's pretty rare to have people who are either or. They do exist, okay? But most of them, not so much. So, while direct, widespread extermination of Gallic culture wasn't the stated Roman policy, a process known as Romanization rapidly and profoundly transformed Gallic society. I mean, they took all of that. You take everything out, you have to replace it with something, right? You take the Druids out, who are the legal system, your scholars, and all this. You have to replace it with something.
Mm-hmm.
So, this rapidly and profoundly transformed Gallic society, leading to the gradual decline of many indigenous cultural elements, like Courtney, you were saying earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This is a complex process driven by a mix of coercion, incentives, and adaptation. You'll see this with Boudica later, too.
I can't wait to
Her
talk about
husband's kind of,
Boudica. Oh my god.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, it's a copy paste, and it starts kind of here.
Yeah.
Latin gradually replaced Gaulish or Celtic as the dominant language, especially among the elite and in urban areas. While Gaulish and indigenous languages persisted in some rural areas for centuries, it eventually faded, or at least was changed. This was not enforced by explicit bans on Gaulish per se, but rather by overwhelming advantages of speaking Latin for social advancement, trade, law, administration. Latin became the language of power and opportunity. We will have seen this here in America, though we did outlaw sometimes indigenous languages, but for the most part, it was usually done like this. So, keeping that tradition proud, I guess. The Romans also established new cities or redeveloped existing Gallic settlements along Roman lines, complete with forums, baths, theaters, temples, and Roman grid plans. Again, like this, look at this. Look at these shiny things. Don't you want to be Roman? We give you baths and access to all the stuff you didn't have before. So I don't want to say carrot here, but they're trying to say that their life is better than the way they were living before.
Mm-hmm.
Again, which is familiar. Gallic tribal structures were largely replaced or integrated into Roman administrative units, or civitats, often followed by boundaries of the former Gallic tribes. Roman law and administrative practices became dominant, eroding gradually traditional Gallic legal systems. Roman policy generally allowed conquered peoples to retain their deities, but encouraged syncretism, the blending of Roman gods with native ones, such as Mars Lenus, Apollo Granus. This led to a hybrid Gallo-Roman religious landscape where Roman practices and iconography became prevalent, while purely Gallic forms diminished. We've talked about this before, and it goes so far as that when Rome, the remaining sources talk about them, they go even a step further, where it's just like they worshipped a god that we call Mars. So they're just straight up saying, like, yeah, they pretty much worship Mars, but we don't know what they actually did.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Druidic suppression also played a role here, of course. Gaul became deeply integrated into the Roman economy with new agricultural practices, trade networks, and taxation systems. Again, like we did to native peoples, none of this hippy dippy communal living shit. You all have private property with private farms with inheritance. This altered traditional Gallic economic structures.
Seeing the way the wind was blowing, many Gallic aristocrats and elites quickly adopted Roman customs, languages, and lifestyles. They saw advantages in collaborating with the Romans, gaining prestige, wealth, and power within the new Roman framework. This top-down Romanization was incredibly effective, as these elites became agents of Roman culture within their own communities. Tacitus, a Roman historian, noted that Romanization efforts encouraged by figures like Agricola in Britain, but illustrating a broader Roman approach, aimed to make conquered peoples accustomed to peace and quiet through pleasures. That is honestly, that is such a disgusting sentence. It tastes terrible. Suggesting a subtle form of cultural absorption that was presented as civilization, but was, in his view, a part of slavery. The Roman conquest involved immense violence and systematic policies that led to the profound suppression and transformation of Gallic culture. The subsequent Romanization was so thorough that over centuries a distinct Gallo-Roman identity emerged, with Latin becoming the progenitor of modern French, and many unique Gallic customs, institutions, and religious practices gradually fading or being absorbed into the dominant Roman framework. The period of 51 to 50 BCE was critical in this process, as it transitioned Gaul from armed resistance to a period of forced pacification and the beginning of its deep Romanization. By 50 BCE, a significant military actions had ceased. Gaul was considered pacified, though it would not formally become a Roman province until 27 BCE. Caesar's legions were strategically spread throughout the region to prevent any new uprisings, but the will to fight had largely been extinguished across Gaul.
And on that most depressing notes,
it is.
It's time, just like most of everyone else then, to turn our backs on Gaul, leave them to their suffering, and look at Rome. Take that as you will. Because of course we can't be done. There's more fighting to do.
When will these guys learn that violence begets violence begets violence?
That's what they want for me. That's what they want.
I know.
So, now we have the impending Roman Civil War between Caesar and Pompey, Golden Boy Pompey. And this began to take precedent. In late 50 BCE, Caesar began to withdraw his legions from Gaul, marking the definitive, quote, end of the Gallic Wars. Though, as we just discussed, they are going to still be suffering. He took the 13th Legion with him across the Rubicon in January of 49 BCE, initiating the civil war that would ultimately lead to his dictatorship. As the Gallic Wars are winding down, Caesar increasingly needed a strong, loyal advocate in Rome. Antony was his man. While technically elected for 52 BCE, Antony was already with Caesar in Gaul during the Siege of Alesia. This office granted him a lifetime seat in the Roman Senate, a significant step in his political career, largely facilitated by Caesar's influence, which is wild. So it's like, hey, you were like the postmaster, now you get to be a senator the rest of your life.
That's wild. That's nuts.
Yeah, imagine like getting any like you're a like governor, anything, and you get to be boom. After that, a senator for the rest of your life, and your opinion matters.
Yuck.
So, yeah.
Yuck.
In 50 BCE, with Caesar's support, Antony was appointed to the prestigious College of Augurs, an importantly priestly office. Augurs interpreted omens and divine will, and their pronouncements could influence public affairs, giving Antony further political leverage. This was Antony's most crucial political appointment during this period. As a tribune, he possessed the power of veto over any senatorial legislation. This position was vital for Caesar, who was increasingly at odds with the Senate in Pompey. Antony used his tribucan power to fiercely defend Caesar's interest, vetoing resolutions aimed at stripping Caesar, new daddy, of his command and legions. And that is where we will leave the story for now.
If you like what you heard today, please give us a positive review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. It goes a long way for us to appease the algorithm gods and get this suggested to others just like you. The more that we can connect to our fellow history nerds, the more that we can build up a community and keep this show going. Also, we have a Patreon where you can hang out with us and get exclusive content, like videos where we might try to make some ancient recipes, talk about topics that couldn't fit into the main arcs of the podcast, and just generally being batshit and dumpster fires, all for the price of a latte per month. Research materials and books cost a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time for us to create this show, so that anything that you could provide would be a huge help.
We can't wait to see you again next week, and as always, thanks for listening.
Bye for now.